Hi, my name is Paul. I'm a country realtor in the state of Virginia and I live near Lexington. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about fixing up a home and buying a fixer. It's a very popular idea and it's very commonly done, and actually it's a very useful and necessary thing that happens in the real estate business because there are a lot of old homes that have been out there for a long time, and a good home will last a very, very long time. So there's a really strong incentive to fix something up and make your what they call sweat equity. So the problem is that you can also bite off more than you chew, and a lot of people have experienced this. I knew some people many, many years ago. They had bought a house, I think it was their first house or something, and they ended up becoming house poor. Well, they paid the mortgage, they just managed, but they didn't have any money to go out and entertain in and do anything else, just stuck in their home and paying the bills and barely squeaking by. Now, if you buy intelligently and do some real good calculations and due diligence when you buy a property, you can actually very, very significantly and very quickly sometimes increase the value of a home. And certainly you can make it more like the way you want. So I'm going to talk a little about the different aspects of it and what you could look for. One thing that, of course, you have to make sure that all the very strong, the very big items are in really good shape. Things like foundations, the roof, the plumbing, all what they call the mechanicals, and so on. If you have a septic and well on a property, they should be in good shape too. So let's say you have a house where you've checked that out and you have the basics are there and you don't have to put any money into it immediately in the big items. That's going to be a real bonus for you because it can cost a lot of money and special time to fix a big roof, especially if it's a really complicated roof with different kinds of eaves and things like that. So you have to think carefully about the condition of a roof, and especially the foundation. Again, a foundation on an older house, sometimes they can sag a little bit if they're not established properly, or water gets into the house, or some kind of drainage happens. So when the house sags, then you got a real serious problem. But if the foundation is solid and you don't see any cracks and everything, you know pretty much that, okay, you can build on that, and now you can turn your attention to some of the more less costly things. So there's a list of things that are somewhat modest. Of course, it makes a very big difference how much labor you personally put into it, but things like a water heater, a person can replace a water heater by themselves, but unless you know what you're doing, it's probably better to leave that kind of thing to a professional. But they're not terribly expensive. They're not like thousands and thousands of dollars to get a water heater installed. And one thing that goes wrong on a water heater system sometimes what they call the diaphragm. There's an air tank and a pressure tank that holds water and air. When the well pumps water into the building, there's this tank, and it has what they call a diaphragm in it. It's like a rubber diaphragm. So when you pump it up with air, it keeps some pressure on that water to feed it through into the water heater and the rest of the house. And sometimes those things, the air pressure in the tank gets low, and sometimes the diaphragm actually breaks and then you don't have any water pressure. Now that's not a very terribly expensive thing to fix because you can get a brand new pressure tank. It's not terribly expensive, and with a plumber's help in a couple hours you could probably get one in pretty easily. So that's one thing that you can take care of. Toilets and sinks. Again, a plumber recommended, but if you turn off all the water in your house and you know what you're doing, you got some decent tools and some time, you can disassemble a bathtub tub surround. You can take out a toilet or a sink and put one in yourself. It's not terribly difficult. Just requires some certain tools and certain knowledge and maybe a little bit of assistance from some friends or something. Windows are better left to a professional generally because sometimes it involves taking out an entire new window. Now, in a lot of these older homes, it's a real big advantage to have the new windows installed anyway because you're going to get better heat, holding heat and insulation in your home. So if you buy a home that has these old windows, it can be quite costly to get them fixed, but at the same time, once you do have them all replaced, it's going to make a big difference in the whole comfort of your house and the looks in it. So windows can be kind of a fairly expensive thing, not like a roof, but you can do a windows just little by little. You can put, another thing that's really nice is to put a bump out window, what they call a bay window, in certain areas, especially over the kitchen sink where you have a little shelf there. You can look out there and see while you're working on your dishes and so on. So those kind of things are fairly modest. Flooring is another one. And many times if you find an old home that has lousy carpet, if it's an old home and it might have beautiful wood floors underneath it, and there's a lot of people have been very surprised when they bought a home and they found shoddy carpet and they said, oh, we're just going to fix it, replace the carpet. Well, when they opened up the carpet, they found out there's a nice floor under there. Say, well, screw the carpet, I'll just get a throw rug and put it on there and enjoy the nice wood. So sometimes you can luck out in a case like that. Doors are fairly easy to replace. You can buy used doors at a place called Restore, Habitat for Humanity. An internal door is not very expensive generally. You can put them up yourself pretty easily. Sometimes just painting a door. You can get some of these old crappy doors from these old houses inside and put some new doorknobs on them. And now the front door and the back door, the main access doors, you want to have them really solid, but you can get a new door installed. You can even install one yourself. Have a beautiful door installed. I've done that myself. And make sure it's all lined up and everything and straight. But putting a brand new door on the front of your house, it's going to change the whole appearance when you walk up to it. So a door is a really good thing to do. Now paint. A lot of people know that paint and what they call paint and putty, putty and paint make something what it ain't. That's an old construction handyman phrase. Basically, you can cover a whole lot of problems with just some paint. You go into some of these old houses where the paint was just like marks on the wall, maybe they had kids, and just buffering and bumping and things like that over the years. Well, you put some nice, clean, fresh paint on there, a nice light color, like a nice yellow or blue or pastel green or something. Boy, it's going to change the entire character of that room, and you can really make a big difference in a bathroom. Sometimes you see old bathrooms and it has the old style painting, and it's just a really bad combination of colors. Just changing the color, putting fresh paint, and also those electrical things that the covers, the switch covers, outlet covers, you can replace them very cheaply. Put some nice ones on, for example, in the living room, or instead of getting the cheap plastic ones, you can buy some ones that are really nice looking and put them on there. So that makes a huge difference. Things like curtains and drapes. Boy, I can see so many houses where man, if they just put a decent drape there, a decent curtain, would change the whole living room. But they don't. So just make sure that you address all the really easy things like that. Paint and curtains and washing the windows. Sometimes just washing the windows makes a huge difference. So the whole idea is to make your investment. If you're going to invest a lot of money in buying a home, let's say, for example, I worked on a listing one time that the house was structurally really, really good, built in the 70s. And then it had some issues, had some cosmetic issues and some flooring and some needed new bathroom fixtures, but everything was just working and everything had copper piping, which is also really good, and had one of those types of roofs where it's just very, very simple, just flat on each side and not too steep because it was split level and you could get easy access to the back roof from the deck. And it's easy to put a skylight in a window in a roof like that. You put a nice skylight over a kitchen or a dining room, and especially if it comes up in the east or the moon shines in at night, it's just going to change the entire character of your living room or your kitchen if you put a skylight up there. So again, windows makes a huge difference. Adding the light, sometimes just putting a little bit larger window in a room, opening up the framing just a little bit more and put like an extra 3-4 square feet of window space in a room or bedroom can make a huge difference. Also sliding doors. I went to look at a house one time and this designer had made a fabulous design. The main master bedroom was they had this full glass looking out of this fantastic valley, just, oh my goodness. And it was very private because where he was at, no one could look in that way. So it had a deck there and you could just open the curtains in the morning and then you look down the valley and stay in your bed. Oh man, windows. Now, things that you really want to look for and the major things like gutters. Gutters can cause problems. Sometimes they're not buried right or they're clogged or something, and then the downspouts are clogged. Downspouts that are clogged can cause some serious water problems on the foundation, but they're not that difficult to fix because sometimes just some clutter and some leaves have gotten down in there, some pine needles or whatever, and you can dig it out and flush that out, and now your whole roof system will collect that water and drain it much better, and you save your foundation. So it's an issue that happens. It's just one of those maintenance issues. Sometimes people live in a house, they never do any maintenance, they never check the gutters, they never do anything. So if you can do that for yourself and save a whole lot of money, things like the septic and the well, I mentioned that. Many times a well pump will go bad. They are replaceable. They're kind of a pain in the neck to replace, actually, but it's possible. But typically a good well pump is buried down in there and hanging in there for a long, long time, and it comes into the house, and that's where most of the issues are. So usually the well pump itself doesn't go bad very easily, but I want to be careful that it's a good idea to ask the seller, hey, do you know anything about the well pump? Has it ever been replaced? I was involved in a transaction last year in which the owner had said, yes, in the last couple of years while we were here, we did put the new well pump in, and that's a bonus, okay? You got a new well pump, that's going to last for a long time. So, the septic system, a lot of people don't know much about septic systems, but they don't really need a lot of maintenance. If you have a house that's built like a 500 cubic foot septic system, typically now they're much larger, but that's a fairly small one, 500. If you've got two people living in there in the house, in a small house, it'll last for a long, long, long time, and you won't have any problems with it. But now and then you have a septic issue, and mainly thing is just clean it out now and then, have someone come and inspect it. It may or may not be an issue, but if you run into a situation where you have to buy a house and it has a septic system, it's a good idea to check it out, at least see what the condition is before you buy it. And in some areas, making a new septic system can be very expensive because of the terrain, the soil, and things like that. But if you have an easy accessible system and it's on a flat and it's run out and it's easy to put the machines there, then putting a new septic in or cleaning it out is not going to be a real huge problem. I mean, it's going to be fairly costly, but not outrageous. A propane tank, sometimes you find propane tanks on a lot of times they're leased by the company that provides the propane. There are cases where you have an oil tank, that's another one. Sometimes the oil tanks for oil heating get rusty, and you can buy new ones and have them installed, but might want to check on them because sometimes they sit in an old house, an oil tank sitting outside, sometimes will start to rust a little bit, and then you got a little bit of an issue. But you can buy new ones. You can also clean them out and paint them so they don't rust anymore, because a lot of times, like I said, they sit outside and they often get kind of their appearance sometimes decays after a time, the oil tanks. Now, getting back to the whole investment part, you have to do some serious calculations and do some budgeting about whether you think a house is worth it to put some installation, some extra investment in. For example, if you have a $200 house, $200,000 house, let's say the house was in ideal condition and pass all inspections would be a $200,000 house. Well, if you have a situation where $10,000 would make a huge, fantastic difference in the house and totally change the whole character, new bathrooms and wall paint and everything, $10,000, maybe 11 or 12 at the most. Well, $10,000, that's like 5% of the total cost of the house. It's not a huge thing. And you can recoup that very quickly in some cases, because a lot of times a house won't sell just simply because of appearances. A lot of people are lazy buyers, frankly. They just want everything just like, okay, I want to walk in there and it's going to be perfect and I'm going to move right in and I don't want to do anything. So, but the clever people and the people who make money on their investment, all the time when you buy a house, think of it as an investment. I'm investing in the long term, not just for my own satisfaction and having my own place to live, but I'm investing for my children might inherit this house, or might want to sell this house and move and make some money on it. So think investment. Putting $10,000 into a $200,000 house is not a lot of money, especially if it's going to last for 10, 20, 30 years. That you're going to look back on that $10,000 and say, well, boy, sure glad I did that. It made a whole difference in my house for years and years to come. So, again, you have to budget. If you have a house situation where you say, well, you know, everything's good, but I need to replace a couple of major big ticket items, maybe you have to do a roof or something. A roof is a lot better than a foundation, especially if the roof is a fairly simple house. Now, if you get some of these roofs where they have all kinds of corners and all kinds of things going on the roof and angles and everything, that's a difficult kind of roof to fix. But if you have one of those roofs that's just a one ridge line and flat on each side, and especially if it's only no more than a 2-level or maybe even a split level and you can get up there, boy, the roofer's going to go, oh man, this is an easy one. I'll take care of that roof, no problem. You see? So think carefully about what's really involved. A foundation is a really serious thing. If you have some of those old foundations that are made by stones and just mortar and everything, and it's starting to decay and the house is sagging, ooh. I mean, it's not impossible. I've met people who did it. Hearts out to them, but boy, trying to do a foundation, you might have to jack up the house and level it and dig into the crawl space and all that kind of stuff. It can be a real big situation to fix a foundation. But it ain't impossible. It's been done. You got the money. If you buy it at the right price, yeah, you can do it. Let me go through my list here. Again, just to regroup here, a lot of old homes, if you figure 30, 40-year-old home, it's been lived in, and the technology has changed, so maybe it is a really perfect time when you buy a house, have a blank canvas. Start all fresh. If the structure is really good and all the foundation, the roof and all that's good, it's well worth putting your money and time into just doing a total internal upgrade. Both the bathrooms, the walls, the drapes. And then once you move in again, you know, people live in their house for many years a lot of times. So I've talked to people who lived in their house 38, 40 years. That's a really long time. And boy, you can imagine all the stuff that happens, the stuff that accumulates in the house, and things that don't get fixed. You probably never see underneath that carpet for years and years and years. And one day you pull it up, someone finally sells the house, maybe they die or something, and then they pull up that carpet and go, wow, there's the beautiful floor when they never used the floor. So again, a little bit of a recap here that you can get sweat equity in and fix up. That's a really good thing to do. And if you have your own skills and some time and a little bit of money and maybe some friends to help you with some of the labor, it can be an extremely good investment to do that on your property and covering the outside as well. I'll go into that perhaps in another video on the outside, external. But again, it's definitely worth it. And if you're a first-time home buyer or whenever, just think carefully about getting some real equity that you put in, and then you look back in the house later and you go, I did that, or I helped design that, and I told the contractor. And then your home becomes incredibly special. And there are people who buy really boring homes. I know, so I've seen some really big homes that are expensive, and they're so boring inside. And people don't even do that. There's a corporate transfer kind of thing. They go and I'm not going to do anything with my house. I'm just going to sell in 5 years in my next job on. So they don't do anything to the house. Well, you can go into a house like that that's basically in good shape, but is boring as hell. Excuse me for language, but then you can just totally change a really good house to make it even much nicer because the previous owner just didn't think like you do. So again, thanks again for listening. I appreciate it very much. Like and share. And I have a whole lot of other videos on this site. I'm a country realtor. I love homesteading, and it's a favorite way of life for me. So please come back and see some other viewings. And now and then we put a listing up here that's I'm an authorized lister, a qualified real estate agent in the state of Virginia, currently licensed. And if you have any questions about finding a home or anything about real estate, please feel free to email me or contact me through this website. So thanks again. I'll talk to you in another video.